Deborah Newell, born in Orange County and a successful interior designer, has been looking to get back out into the dating scene. Deborah comes across a man by the name of John Meehan. John's resume is very prestigious and is someone that Deb is very interested in meeting. Upon their first physical encounter, Deborah's daughter, Veronica, instantly isn't too fond of him and thinks that he is dangerous. Deborah doesn't see it. What are the warning signs that Deborah should have seen? And why does Deb fall for John? Today I, Noel Bloor, am joined by Leonardo Pham, and we will take a deep dive into why Deborah falls for Dirty John. Okay, so Leo, what do you think the first warning sign you saw about John Meehan?
I feel like, we see it at the very start. He appears to be very charming and romantic, but I feel like, the viewer and us can tell he's very secretive about his dark past. And I feel like, especially if you're like a loving individual who's looking for a significant other, you have to be very open with each other. And I feel like John wasn't very open about himself, so I feel like that alone is a huge warning sign. So
Yeah, I know what you mean, because I found that John was just trying to hear about Deborah's life and wasn't really sharing anything about his, which, in like when you're in the moment, I think Deborah thought that was very charming and nice of John, because most you tend to see that most people just want to talk about themselves, but John just wanted to hear about Deborah. But really, you honestly maybe think that John was doing this just so that he can get an inside scoop of how he can take further advantage of Deborah. Yeah.
Just to add on to that, I feel like, you're absolutely right on that, but also I feel like John did that purposely to maybe isolate Deborah from her friends and family. He gets her all to herself, then obviously, as we can tell, that John wanted to use her for her money and her wealth or whatnot, more so rather than actual love.
Yeah.
So I feel like by isolating Deborah herself, she feels vulnerable and has no one else to go to besides John himself. So I feel like that is another reason.
Yeah, which I guess one thinks, why does Deborah fall for John? If we see these warning signs, you think that Deborah should see them too, but you think that we know that Deborah has been married 4 times before, which is 4 more times than both of us have been married. But you think after time number 4 you'd be a little desperate. What's wrong? Like, why? Maybe I'm too picky, and maybe I think she wants it to work. I think she wants. She doesn't want it to fail another time. She just wants to find the right person, and she maybe might be lowering her standards a little bit just to get what she
just
wants.
to add on to that as well, when John does talk about himself, and obviously as we know as the episodes progress and like the series itself in general, but at first John's resume and like the way he presents himself, it actually seems very impressive to Deborah. He mentioned that he went to Iraq, he worked with Doctors Without Borders, so I feel like that alone, that's how Deborah fell for John. And I feel like that was very appealing to her because, as you mentioned before, she did go on previous dates. She was desperate to find the one, quote unquote. And obviously during that time and in the moment, John felt like that was the one, So I feel like
because John's resume that Deborah was given via John was a very high end one. You don't see that in many people. You don't see many people who have all those accolades that John allegedly has. So I can see maybe why she can move past those warning signs, like the one after the first date where we see that John was like on her bed, with shoes on, and it was very, very strange thing to see via the audience's perspective. And obviously Deborah felt a little uncomfortable herself when she was saying, "Hey, I think we should call it a night." And John was very I want to see, I guess weird is the word I'm saying, the reaction that he gave to Deborah, and then how, especially after you see the next day, John calls Deborah and is basically almost gaslighting it, saying that it's her fault, saying, like, hey, like, I know, like, you were very, like, saying all these things that made it her fault, almost, where it was all his fault, which
I feel like that situation itself was a huge warning sign to not only Deb but the viewer as well, because I feel like that situation alone made John appear to seem very controlling and demanding, and obviously as like the series progresses, we see that characteristic of John becomes more true and true. But overall, I feel like that huge warning sign Deb should have seen like that right away.
Yeah.
But obviously, like we mentioned before, that she was really desperate to look for the one. So I feel like from Deb's perspective, I guess we could see an understanding of why she fell for John. But we also have to understand too that, like, if you're looking for someone in general, these little warning signs here and there could actually be very vital to a future together. So I feel like
Yeah. Well, also, you see the little things that John does that Deb appreciates. Like, you see that John makes smoothies every day for Deborah, and Deb really appreciates that. If you see in the episodes, and she, like, makes all these little smoothies, and it's something that
she never got before.
she never got before with the other 4 marriages, and but also one thing you got to consider is how quickly John married Deb. It was only like 8 weeks or something after they met, which is
and they said I love you really quickly.
Yeah, very ridiculous. Like, it's ridiculous even. Like, 8 weeks ago, what's that? Like, that's early April. Like, they basically met like before Easter.
It's only like 2 months.
Yeah, even. 2 months, and not even like basically they met like Easter time, and then they just got married. Which,
I mean, not only that too. I feel like not only they got married quickly, I feel like Deb didn't even get the approval from her family herself. I mean, you can see that like her daughters didn't even approve of John in the first place. And
yeah.
Obviously, they even went to the limit where it's like they put a tracker on one of the cars, right? That's how
like it's very like John was very quickest guy I've ever seen with the moves. He wasted no time.
Fair play, to be honest.
Yeah, hey, like you want to respect, but at the same time, it's like the way John is, like he's doing that just to take advantage, right?
I feel like in general too, like if you are looking to marry, I feel like the biggest thing too is getting the family's approval, right?
Yeah.
I feel like Deb just completely ignoring her daughters and like the people around her's opinions was very interesting to me.
Yes.
I feel like, especially coming from a lot of wealth, I feel like she'd be more understanding of people's situation and emotions, but I feel like her ignoring her family's opinions regarding John was very...
Well, because especially with John not really having much family of his own, so obviously John will be part of Deborah's life.
Yeah.
John will be going to all of Deborah's family gatherings because John doesn't have any family of his own. So all the time, will just be of him going to Deborah's family gathering. Christmas will always be at Deb's family. They don't have nothing at John's side because John stated that he doesn't talk to his family.
Yeah, I feel like to add on to that as well, obviously he does very he low key says it too, where it's like, you don't want to meet my family or whatnot, but I feel like if you're not open about like your family's history, I feel like that is another warning sign itself too, because the other person doesn't know how you were raised, where you were from, they don't even know who you truly are, right? So I feel like as the series progressed too, like Deborah didn't really know who John was until we found out later on that he actually went to Orange County Jail, got a letter, and obviously John got mad when he saw that letter.
Which is obviously I think everyone has a right to question, hey, you went to jail, you didn't tell me. I think going to jail is something you do want to tell someone, especially if you're marrying.
Exactly.
Them. Like, it's not like a thing, it's not even like something you did like when you're like 15, right? Like, like if you when you do something when you're 15, you can kind of just, hey, like, it's not really that important. But when, like, John was an adult, he went to jail.
Yeah.
I think it's something that's a very important thing. I'm not sure about you, but I don't think I would want to marry someone that went to jail because, maybe it just something it can affect going traveling, because like traveling when you have a record is very difficult. And like it's something.
I feel like another thing too is that like John didn't even want to address the situation. He didn't even bring it up to Deborah herself. She had to find out from other sources, and she had to find out herself too, right? I mean, obviously John implanted those cameras for a reason, to make sure that maybe Deborah doesn't go through his stuff, right? But obviously Deborah had to find out herself about John's history. So I feel like John not addressing his past self was actually a really huge warning sign, and it obviously affected Deborah later on, as we can see. But it's
but you would think after Deb finds out this stuff that she would be like, hey, this isn't working, but no, she kept pushing through. Like, you can really see how she just wanted this to work, and she was sacrificing so much. But what was John sacrificing?
I mean,
you know?
it does make sense of why she wanted to make it work, because obviously they were married.
They were married, yeah.
And obviously they were in love, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I feel like, yeah, like you said before, like, what was John's sacrifices, right? Like,
yeah.
I feel like he had little to no contribution at all, and Deborah was the one taking most of the hits, right?
Yeah.
Mainly from her family.
Yeah.
And obviously her business well. And
yeah, like, like no one from her family liked John at all.
Exactly.
Like, it wasn't even like, you know, Veronica was like, oh, yeah, he's all right. No, like, from the beginning, when John walked into that house wearing those...
Something seemed off right away.
Yeah, which is something that you really should consider, especially, like, through all those divorces that Deb had, really all she had was her family, her daughters, her nephew Toby. Like, really, that's all she had.
And they couldn't
so you
get
think,
her approved.
like, you think that she would want to appreciate their opinion more, but no, she just wanted this to work so bad. Like, selfishly a little bit, honestly, because she, like, really all she cared about was just her finding love, right? And finding John, even though all she saw was the accolades that she had, the Doctors Without Borders, the anesthesiologist, but, like, really what she didn't see was just how her family acted around.
And, like, as we could see, like, when we get flashbacks from John, like, he's always been like this, right? I mean, Deborah was just another victim to him. I mean, we see with John, like, how he was with past relationships, how he's always been manipulative. He's always been taking drugs. He's always been, you know, doing criminal acts, which proves to us, the viewer, that, like, he's always been like this, right? Like, he hasn't changed at all just for Deb, right? He's always been using other individuals just to get his needs and his wants, right? So I feel like that was a huge warning sign itself.
Yeah, like, everything just added up. It just seems like, you know, it's just hard to believe how Deb could just, you know, ignore those warnings. Like, I don't know, but I would totally see those as red flags and try to end it very quickly, because you can't have, like, especially if someone like Ainsley walks in and then they basically, like, you know, we see that John walks in and he was looking homeless when he walked in, because, like, kind of, he probably was at the time because he got out of prison, but, you know, and, like, and then he goes from that, and then, like, no one Tara doesn't like John at all. Veronica doesn't like John at all. Toby doesn't like John.
No one does.
No one does. And you think that you would be like, hey, no one here likes him. What am I missing here?
I feel like by no means am I defending Deborah at all, but I feel like we have to look from her perspective as well. Like we mentioned before at the very start, that she was really desperate to look for the one, right? So, like, I mean, we see at the very beginning, the very first episode, she's been on several dates, and she just hasn't been able to find the match.
She just I think maybe she feels a little lonely, and she just wants someone to fill that hole that she has in her heart. Maybe and she thought maybe John was, like, you know, seeing John's accolades and seeing what John does. It just maybe that's what she was really looking for. And John, with his, like, smooth moves, and his riz is very, you know.
No, I feel like too, like, when we see Deborah interact with her other past dates too, it's not genuine conversation.
No.
But I feel like with John and Deborah and their conversation, how they acted around each other is very genuine, I feel. And that's another reason why Deborah fell for John, because she actually felt a connection, but the only downside to it was that Deborah was falling with not actually John. It was just another fake act, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I guess she's falling for John's persona.
Yeah, exactly.
Per se, not John. Like, John, you know, you kind of got to respect how good he was at
acting.
Faking. Yeah.
Like, fair play,
Like, it was honestly, like, give him an Oscar, you know? Like, for his performance. Like, it was very, I do understand what you're saying. It's very, like, believable what she, like, I know because we also get a different perspective because we're watching the show as a viewer, and we see the stuff that the show intends us to see.
Exactly.
Right? What Deb doesn't see that. You know, she just sees
a
handsome guy, and so
she sees a person that she's always been trying to look for. Right?
Yeah, and she wants it to work, because she goes, hey, like, if I let this go, like, you know, what else is there out there? You know, she's already tried everything.
Exactly.
Right.
And I feel like when they did meet up later on, she actually did, like, near the end when the series was bad, and I feel like the last 2 episodes, she actually started cluing herself that, like, okay, yeah, I wasn't dating the person who I thought I was dating, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as we can see when they meet up together and that little date they have or whatnot, she literally tells him, what do you want from me, right?
Yeah.
And it was just for the money, and John, he doesn't directly say it, but, you know, the whole time we can clearly assume that he was there just purely for her wealth.
Yeah,
rather
like she
than
was
actual love.
like John wasn't there for the right reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you guys, and.